once I heard that none of the pilots that were involved in the Japanese raid on Hawaii on December 7th lived through the war. But then I heard that some did live through the war, so I don't know. But as of right now that I understand, yes, they're all gone.
Right.
That,
I mean, it was just so long ago,
yeah.
too. Yeah.
And of course, when I look at it in a, I'll say a common sense, from a common sense point of view, it's quite natural that they'd be gone. I'm the oddball, I mean, still being here, that not, they aren't. But the casualties for the Japanese pilots was very high, the casualty rate, very high, very high. Okay, so then that was the case. They,
well, how long were you on the buoy?
okay, that's it. I'm going to say I was on there for 30 minutes to an hour or so, that till they, on shore, somebody thought that the raids were basically over and it was reasonably safe for a boat to go out and see if there were any survivors. And that's what I feel happened, because they did send a boat out, and they went over to the areas where the planes had been parked, and in some cases there were maybe some still burning on the water. I'm not real sure what the scoop was on that, but they came around, and I stood up on the buoy and waved, and they saw me immediately. We're only a few hundred yards offshore, in fact, at this time, and they took me into the shore, and I guess I must have looked pretty bad, because I had been swimming through that oil and gasoline, and I was black. And I had burns on my face and hands and arms. And so they hauled me off to sick bay right away. Well, they tied a casualty tag on me. And then I was not badly wounded. It did not require immediate attention in comparison to what the needs of some of the fellows were. And so I waited for a couple hours until they got around to treating me. And then that they just gave me a casual treatment of some kind, and then I was reassigned to duty right away that same day.
Well, if you were burned, I mean, weren't you in quite a bit of pain?
I'm sorry? No, not a lot.
Really?
What are burns? First and second, I guess, are the little ones. Third is the big one. That I had first and second degree burns is all.
Okay.
I had some scars on my head for many, many years, but they were slight. And as far as a pain, I never even thought of it in that sense. So then I was reassigned to duty later that day, and I got with a group, as I recall. How, I don't remember, but as I recall, one of the senior enlisted men or one of the junior officers got a bunch of us together, and we were issued rifles at that time, and then we went down to the beach, and as I recall, we spent a night or two on the beach, because we were quite certain there would be an invasion. And we were so disorganized, but we spent a couple nights on the beach down there, expecting the Japanese to attack. But like I usually end the story with, fortunately, it never happened.
It
so
didn't happen that way.
Yeah. Okay.
So what happened to your barracks?
The what?
Your barracks where you lived?
I don't recall if mine was destroyed or not. I just don't really recall.
Well, then you didn't go really back there after the attack? I mean,
I don't remember of it. I just maybe I did. Maybe I change clothes, because I must have been wet and a mess. But I'm just not certain anymore exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so after the few days on the beach, what did they do with you?
Okay, well then, of course, things were getting kind of back to normal. And we started resuming our duty. We didn't have, I can't think if we had any flyable planes after that or not, but I think we did have, that they got planes to go back into the air in a couple of days or so. Yes, I know they did, because a couple of days later, we went over to Ford Island. We flew over to Ford Island for some reason that I don't know what that was. But we were just getting ready to start in more routine patrols, the same as we'd done before the war.
So how many guys in your patrol got killed when they were strafing those planes on the water?
Yeah, I understood that of the planes on the water, that I was the only one that got out alive. But now I'm told that there was another one that got out alive, and I'm just not sure.
Okay.
But
There weren't too many, in other words,
yeah,
that got out alive.
I've made inquiries, and nobody's ever given me anybody's name that I'm sure came out alive, but I hear conflicting stories on what some of the other situations were, and I'm just not certain. That okay, where do we go from here?
So you're back doing routine patrols?
Okay, very good. Okay, we did that, and we did that in the squadron for quite a few months. After that, in I think it was March 1942, 41, 42, yeah, that I was assigned with a couple other crews, my crew and a couple other ones. We came back to San Diego and picked up some new PBY-5As from the factory at Consolidated down there. We came back on, gee, I think it was the USS Chicago or St. Louis cruiser, as I recall. We came back on the ship and got to San Diego and to pick up these new planes. Oh, let's see, we're talking, quote, about my life, not just okay, because something happened.
Yeah. Huh? Yes.
Okay, this is something I like to relate, that God was smiling on me. When we were coming back to the States, I had met my later wife while I was at radio school in Alameda before the war. Okay, now I got out there at Hawaii and stuff, and of course, everyone was very concerned about our whereabouts. Mail and stuff wasn't too good. We'd been corresponding while I was out there, but here I'm getting a chance to go back to San Diego, and she's up in Oak. She lived in Oakland at the time, and I figured, oh boy, it'd sure be nice if she could come down there and I could see her. And we're going to be there 3 days, as I recall. And so as soon as I got ashore, that I got on the phone and called her. She wasn't home. She was, I don't know, at work someplace. But I talked to her mother. And when I say God was smiling on me, he put the words in my mouth that said, oh, Mrs. Anderson, I'm glad I got you first. I said, I want to talk to Madeline, but I was going to ask her if she could come down to visit me, and I'd like to have your permission. I don't know where I ever thought of anything like that. But the mother, well, we got along okay anyway, but now I'd only known her daughter for a couple of months, and sailors weren't often held in the highest regard in those days. And from what my wife told me is when she got home, her mother just about had her packed and ready to go, that she wanted her to go down there and see.
You're like at the top of her list now.
Oh, yeah. So she came down there, and we had a few days together, and renewed our relationship, so to speak. But then we picked up these new planes and flew them back out to Hawaii. And that flight, you have to modify the planes a little bit for a 20-some, over 2,000 mile flight on that. And we put in extra tanks and stuff. But that flight from San Diego to Hawaii lasted 23 and a half hours. It's the longest flight I've ever been on, and it's longer than most people have ever been on. But there are some that have beat it now. But we were on that, and we took the planes back out there. And then after we arrived there with the new planes, it was routine patrols in the area until the Battle of Midway. And right after the Battle of Midway, we were assigned to advanced base duty out on Midway Island. So we were at Midway for, I can't remember, a month, 2 months, something like that. After that advanced base duty was completed, we were basically assigned to Henderson Field at Guadalcanal, and on the way down, we stopped at Palmyra and Fiji,
Wow.
New Hebrides, and island hopping, so to speak, to get down there. But then in late November or December, then we arrived at Henderson Field at Guadalcanal. It was shortly after the big battles down there in the Lady Gulf, Suribachi, I can't remember exactly. But then by that time, they had developed some of this Black Cat technique for patrol squadrons going out to harass the Japanese fleet at night, and we did drop torpedoes, bombs. I don't recall much strafing, but the Japanese were, of course, making an effort to get into the South Pacific and Australia, and they were bringing all the troops and stuff down there, and our job, certainly with many others too, was to harass the enemy at night and try and prevent these shipments from getting through. And after that, the big battle down there, I think it was November of '42, that was, I'll say, lots of mopping up. That when we were on Henderson Field, that we had nightly raids. The Japanese would just about every night come over and drop a bomb or two. But they were mostly harassing raids, not destruction raids. There were Japanese on the island when we were there, and we would occasionally get called to go into the foxholes to, while the Marines or somebody took care of it, because we didn't. I can recall a little human interest thing, that down there, rain or shine, if there was a movie at night, we watched it. Now we're in pretty much of a tropical area, so the rains, they're not cold. I mean, you can sit out there in the rain. And what they would do is stretch a bed sheet, basically, they put up a bunch of logs on to sit on, just cut down some logs, and then the bed sheet would be in between them, so more people could watch if they wanted. So if you were on the wrong side of the bed sheet, of course, everything is backwards. The printing and stuff, you couldn't. It was all written backwards, but it was. But we went anyway. Something to do. So.
Nothing else to do, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Nothing else to do. In fact, I'm sure it's still the case that I've always been taught, and I certainly believe it. But one of the biggest morale problems that any military organization has is boredom. That try and keep these guys busy, and the term "busy work", that's where it came from. But keep you doing something, because, oh boy, idle hand is the devil's workshop, or something like that, and that's very true in the military. So we proceeded with the patrols down there in the Henderson Field, Guadalcanal, New Hebrides area. I can recall going over to a couple of the islands, but the details escape me now.
Did you ever see anything worth reporting?
I'm sorry?
And your patrols, did you ever see anything worth reporting?
Oh yeah, we'd come back with bullet holes in the planes and stuff once in a while. And yeah. Now where I was, my personal workstation on the plane was a radio station. It was, quote, I'll say, down in a hole. I didn't see a heck of a lot. But once in a while I'd be assigned as a lookout, and then I would see some certain things. In fact, the only time that I can actually remember seeing another enemy plane while we were flying was we were off Midway, and one of their patrol bombers or patrol planes was out doing the same thing we were from a different base, and as I recall, he was off a half a mile or so from us. And if I recall it correctly, we were both flying in the same direction for a while. And also, again, as I recall, I use that term a lot, I know, that our orders were to observe and report. I mean, you don't necessarily go out and attack a plane like that, because the theory being that your services are more required to find out about the enemy and report it, so somebody else could take care of it if it's deemed necessary. So as I see it, that's what that other Japanese plane was doing too. His orders were exactly the same as ours, so there was no contact. There were no shots fired between us. You didn't go over and, quote, pick a fight, let's say it that way. Yeah.
Right.
So that was the, and then at Guadalcanal, that is down there through, December, January, February '42, and that